Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Debrief. So excited to talk to you guys about goals. And this week, my special guest is the secret sauce of Sandals Church, Dan Zimbardi.
Hey, what's up, guys? So glad that you're here.
Yeah, so don't miss Sandals' version of the Italian Stallion this week on the Debrief. So this is Dan Zimbardi. Tell us something about yourself.
Yeah, so I've been on staff for a little more than 8 years. God called me out of the marketplace. I was an entrepreneur and a corporate citizen.
Well, God called you and I begged.
Yeah.
Right.
Those things work together.
Yeah. So this is no joke. The year that I hired Dan, his corporate bonus was larger than the salary that I offered. I've never felt so small when I slide an offer. And by the way, it was the biggest offer we'd ever made as a church.
That's true.
And I was like, please, pretty please. And so
Yeah.
Dan took that, and super glad. And let
me say this though. Beyond saying yes to Jesus and yes to my beautiful wife Lori, it was the best decision I've ever made, and I mean that. I mean, I have my dream job. I love the people that I get to work with.
Incredible, motivational, inspirational boss.
Especially you. But being
And
able
humble.
to do...
And humble.
That's right.
Yeah.
I'd pat you on the back, put your hands in the way. That's
right.
the old saying.
That's right.
But anyway, yeah, I love getting to do my life's work. So thank you.
Yeah, so if you're checking us out live, submit questions so we can take them live, and I'll get to as many of them as I can. And we're going to try to shoot for about 45 minutes tonight. We're trying to do this later so that you guys can join us. I know there's some confusion. We were doing 10 a.m., now we're doing 6:30 p.m., and we're just trying to get more live questions so that we can roll through this. So let's start with an anonymous question. That is the specialty of the Debrief. No one wants to take credit for their question, but God knows.
Yeah.
So it says anonymous from Instagram. How can you make sure your goals are God-led and not self-worship? At what point do goals become idolatry? That's a whopper for number one.
Yeah, that's a good one. You want me to take that start?
Yeah, that's why you're here.
Yeah,
You're the guest.
So yeah, I think back to, I'm going to tell a little story as I try to answer that question. Years ago, probably 20 years ago, we were blessed to buy a house here in Southern California. It sat on an acre. It was a new house, and it was an acre filled with dirt.
Yeah.
And so I set a goal. Within 5 years, I wanted to see no more dirt. And so we set off, my wife and I, to put in walls and gates and a pool and a courtyard and grass for miles and trees, and we accomplished our goal at the end of that 5 years. But at the end of that 5 years, what I realized is I was building my kingdom.
Yeah.
I was not building God's kingdom, and God really convicted me in that way. And one of the ways He convicted me tangibly is I used to walk out early in the morning as the sun was coming up, out to the front yard, and I would look out at the beautiful sod and grass and mow strips and all the stuff that we had planted, and sort of admiring my kingdom, if you will. And one morning I walk out, and it's pretty dark still, and there's a giant hole in the front yard. And there wasn't a giant hole there when I went to bed that night. And so I thought, man, I shook my head. I thought, something's not right. It's dark. I don't know. There's something with the angle. So I go back inside. An hour later, the sun comes up. I walk out. There's still a giant hole in the front yard. And there's no dirt around the perimeter of the hole. And it turns out my septic had collapsed.
Oh, that's nice.
And so we had to put in a new septic. The dirt movers came in to dig it out and put in a new one. It destroyed the whole yard. The grass, the sod, the mow strips, the trees, everything. And God was showing me that, this is what happens when you set a goal that is about yourself.
Right.
A goal that is about building your kingdom. And so at the end of the day, it's what is your goal about? What's the North Star?
Yeah.
I think goals lead us and drive us to either God or grief. Mm-hmm. That's an example where the goal of completing the yard in 5 years led us to a lot of grief.
Yeah.
And, if you have a goal that is about the Lord, it's about building His kingdom, I think you're going to avoid, oftentimes a lot of grief. And so really it's what is the North Star of your goal? And that's going to help you determine if it's a godly goal or if it's your own goal that really just becomes an idol.
Yeah, and so for those of you who are not navigational in terms of the oceans. The North Star, right, guided people for hundreds of years before we had compasses and iPhones. And some of you don't even know how to find anything except for your phone. So what it did is it allowed you to find out where you were based upon where it was. What I would say this is make it your goal to enjoy things but serve God. And I think a lot of people end up serving things and occasionally enjoying God. So I'm going to go on Christmas, Easter, and I try to hold on to things very, very lightly and to hold on to God very, very tightly, because septic tank things can happen, property can burn down, there's earthquakes, there's COVID, right? All of these things can happen, and the sense of permanence and investment evaporates very quickly, like our stock market, right? But God doesn't do that. So let me take this live question here. How do I keep my family and friends motivated to follow Christ with all that's going on? We're going to talk this week, and what I would say, I'm going to give this to Dan, but what I would say is be inspirational. And so what I try to do is, I'm not a person and Dan is not a person. Neither of us needs motivation. We don't need somebody to pep us up, get us going. We're naturally motivated people. And so what I try to do is motivate others to do things. A lot of people during COVID have gained weight. I said early on, I told my wife, I said, I want to be in the best shape of my life when we get out of this. I didn't have a lot to do, so I'm going to work out and exercise, and I've been doing that for 8 weeks. I'm just a person who naturally sets goals. And here's the thing is, you got to be careful that you're not arrogant, because that turns people off to goal setting, and you got to make sure that you don't make people feel small. So try to be inspirational and invite people into what I call doable change. Man, if you're 400 pounds, a marathon is probably not the first goal, but a 5K could be a goal. I mean, that's something that I think is a realistic goal. So you have a pair of knees when you're left over, and you can do that. And so try to motivate people. So what I would say is look at yourself, and just again, last week's message or last week's debrief was ask some people, do I motivate you? And I would say this, Dan, you and I have this talk a lot with our leaders. We have strong leaders. We have great leaders at our church. But one of the thresholds for a truly great leader is the ability to motivate and inspire. And I think that's a challenge. It's hard to do because it's, on the regular. I think I thought a paycheck was motivation. We found out that is not motivation. You got to motivate people, and you got to encourage them to do that. So what would you say to that? Yeah,
I would say, especially as it relates to your family and friends, I would start with this: leaders set the pace.
Yeah.
Leaders set the pace. And so if you're looking at your family and you're looking at your friends and they're not following the Lord the way that you hope and aspire for them to follow the Lord, you probably need to look at yourself. And I'm not trying to blame whoever asked that question. Right. I think it's a great question. But leaders set the pace. And so it may be that you're not at the level of leadership that you should be or you could be. And so just it's about modeling and being an example. I want my kids to wake up every day and walk outside and see me reading my Bible. I'm trying to set the pace for them. Now, I tell them to read the Bible, and I tell them Bible stories, and I share the gospel. I mean, I do all these things with them, but most importantly, I'm trying to set the pace for them. I'm trying to set the example. So that would be my encouragement to folks about how to lead your family and keep them inspired to follow Christ. I would say the other thing I would add to your question is people are inspired by vision. Vision is exciting. It's fun. It's typically big. Right. If you're someone that struggles with crafting a vision, I would say a vision should come from your burden. What are you burdened by? I tell people all the time when I talk about this in our orientation meetings, I say, vision should be birthed from burden. Think about Pastor Matt's burden as a young man, his burden to be able to be real, and of all places, in the church. Yeah. And so out of that burden, God, through him, birthed this church where the vision is to be real. And so if you're thinking about how to inspire people, think about vision, how you can craft that based on a burden that you have.
And I would say this, nagging is not inspiring.
No.
And critiquing is not inspiring. So my son and I are trying to read through Proverbs together, one chapter a day. It's been about 10 days, and we're on chapter 4. And so we've tried this multiple times. And so here's what I've learned. Bible reading with your kids. I don't do well operating outside of what I normally do. So if I'm not already in Proverbs, it's difficult for me to keep up with my Bible reading and add Proverbs. So what I did this time is typically I read 3 or 4 chapters in the morning of Old Testament or New Testament, and I add 1 chapter of Psalms, Proverbs, Ecclesiastes. I think wisdom is just something to just kind of really, really think about and process no matter where you are in the Bible. And so that's just something, a habit I've developed. But I've made a commitment that I'm going to go at his pace.
That's great.
And so today is Proverbs chapter 4, and I said, hey, did you do your Bible reading today? And he said, no. I said, okay, I want you to try to do it today so we can talk about it tonight. And the reason I love Proverbs, especially for young men, is that whole book is about a father who's trying to inspire his son. And so that's what I would do is with your kids, when you're trying to do something that's not natural, that's going to be really, really difficult. And so I would try to incorporate, Bible reading into just your life. And so the Shema, to hear, O Israel, which is the most famous verse for the Jewish person, talks about writing the scripture on your head and on your heart and on your arm, reading it to your kids all day long before you get up and after you go to bed. So Jewish people have interpreted that literally, and they tie it on their foreheads and they tie it on their arms. And I don't think that's what God meant at all. What God means is as you work, right, it's on your arm. As you think, it's on your mind. And as you eat with your kids, it's around the table and it's with you in the morning. So what God is saying in the Shemaiah, we say Shema in English, it's Shemaiah, is God's word needs to be permeating through the natural, normal life of your family. Bible studies are awkward. It's awkward. Okay, now we're going to be spiritual, right? We've been physical, emotional, and dysfunctional all day long. Now we're going to serve Jesus. That's weird and that's awkward. So what it needs to be is it needs to become a normal, natural part of your life. And that's why we have kids ministry at church. We're trying to take biblical concepts and deliver it to them at their age. And a lot of parents take their kids in worship. And I understand sometimes you need that, but what your kids need is to be developing a relationship with God at their level so one day you can talk it with each other. So how did PMB's meeting with Governor Newsom go? Will Sandals be gathering live this weekend? No, we did not meet together, and no, we will not be gathering this weekend. We're working that out. We're going to make an announcement, I think, Thursday of what we're going to be doing. And, I was disappointed, I think, as you were, with the governor's response. Just pray for our conversations with him. There is open dialogue between my group and his office, and now that dialogue is direct. So now we're directly talking with his office. We have not been able to directly talk with him, but that's okay. I mean, we got people here too, and those people can get stuff to me, and that works that way. So we're happy with that. But I think what you can pray for is that Governor Newsom, I think, and I don't mean this in a negative way, but I think he's truly ignorant of the size of many churches in our state. I don't think that's something that he knows about or understands. And his perspective, and the pastors that I've worked with that work with him, have minuscule is the right word, congregations. Extraordinarily small congregations, and most of those people do social ministry. So they're not really into soul winning, discipling, reading God's word. They're into noble things, feeding the homeless, caring for people. They do social work under the umbrella of Christ. And so those are very, very small entities that have a lot of dependency on government money. Sandals is not dependent on government money because we do what we believe is we're called to do, which is the work of the church, which occasionally, right, we feed people, we clothe people, we help people, but we're more concerned with your soul than we are simply with physical needs. So just continue to pray for that. And I'm going to be outlining a vision statement for how we're moving forward this week. And so what I'm going to give you is 4 or 5 values that I'm using to move us forward. And so I'll be releasing that. We'll film it on Thursday. It'll probably come out Thursday afternoon, Friday morning, but we will not be meeting together this weekend. But there are some exciting things that are coming. And so under the current order, obviously, we're going to be able to do a lot more than we could. And so we're excited about that. And we celebrate that because so much of what I was frustrated about was the language of, the church is not essential, and the fact that we were unable to do simple acts of care and meeting and counseling. And, the initial response was that I was wrong, that suicides are not going up. Northern California announced this week that there were more deaths by suicide than there were from COVID. So now that's an official fact. So what I said 4 weeks ago, the government is catching up to. So keep praying for that, because we don't want to see people taking their life. We don't want to see people ending it because they're frustrated, depressed, isolated, or alone. We want to be there for those people.
Can I add on real super quick? To our church, I just want to say this is a very complex issue.
Yeah.
It's not a simple issue. And a lot of people feel very strongly on the either side of the issue, right? Stay closed or stay open. And what I would say to our church is your perspective is largely based on your circumstances, meaning our oldest daughter is a nurse in San Diego. She's treating COVID patients. Her perspective is based on the circumstances of seeing people die of the virus.
Right.
And her perspective is everyone stay home. Now, there's a lot of people that have started businesses, that own businesses, that have been successful. They've created a great way for jobs and to serve the community for 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, and now their business is failing. So that's their circumstances. And so their perspective is based on that. They want the economy and the church, everything to be open.
Yeah.
So I would just say everyone who has a very hard line and perspective on this, understand that your perspective is based on your circumstances, and just be open and respectful to the complexities of the issue that we're faced with.
Yeah, and so, and like Dan said, we have consulted with doctors who are treating COVID patients because we didn't want to just make this as a pastoral decision. And so we'll let you know that, and just everybody chill out and try to serve God by controlling your temper and watching your words and what you say, because many of you are sinning against God in the name of God, and you're really violating, His worship because of your understanding of your freedoms. And so be really, really careful what you do. All right. So I'm new to Christianity, but I feel as though I'm a Christian who has been sitting on the fence, watching, and has never taken that leap into my faith. I read my Bible. I read a devotional. Well, you do more than most people. I pray, but I still feel as though I have not made a true connection with God in my faith. My goal is to wholeheartedly dive into my faith and my relationship with God, but I just don't know how to exactly do this. And I guess, what steps should I take to do that? Dan, lead us to the promised land.
I think the word that comes to mind for this person is sacrifice. Jesus says, for those that want to follow me, deny yourself, pick up your cross, and follow me. And so deny yourself. This first idea is about sacrifice. It's sacrificing the things that you want, your heart's desire, your flesh. And I think intimacy with God, for many of us, that road is traveled through sacrifice. Sacrificing maybe financially, sacrificing our comfort, whatever the case may be. And so for that person, and again, obviously we don't have context on these questions, but maybe the idea for them to process and spend time with God on is what do I need to sacrifice so that I can draw nearer to you, because I'll have to rely on you more. So that's what comes to mind when I hear that
Yeah,
question.
let me just give you, I think we talked about last weekend, right? There's opportunity, there's passion, and there's calling. And a lot of people want to be passionate about God, and so they look for a place where they can use their passions to serve the Lord. Some people look for opportunities. And what I would really encourage you to do is really to work out of that category called calling. And let me just give this to you. So I was on the phone with a pastor in LA last week, and I said, hey, here's some areas where Sandals needs help. So the church has gone largely video. It's gone largely digital, and we need help from our LA brothers and sisters in Christ. And I said, here's some job openings that we might be thinking about. Absolutely no problem. He says, I got tons of people. Well, he talked to tons of people. Guess how many of them were willing to consider Riverside? Zero. Because opportunity has to align with passion, because they don't have a calling. Yeah. Tammy and I lived in Huntington Beach, right? And we had an opportunity to serve God. We could have gone anywhere. We had a passion to serve God, and we wanted to serve Him anywhere. And so we had a calling to Riverside. And that's the quickest way. When people tell me, let me know when there's Sandals Church Hawaii, I don't want to let you know. Yeah. Unless, of course, you live in Hawaii, which some people do. But Jesus is not calling, you to leave Blythe, California to go to Hawaii. He's calling you to surrender where you are in Blythe, California, and say, God, here's my yes. You give me the arrow. And that's what a lot of people want to do, is they want to give God all the control as long as He listens to them wanting to stay in control. And that just doesn't work. So I would just encourage you, keep pressing in and just invite God into your heart. Invite God into what's going on in your life. And just know that this is a journey, and it's taken me 24 years as your pastor to figure this out. I've become very suspicious of God's call when it's aligns with my passions.
Sure.
I always
Yep.
get a little wobbly when I'm super excited about something that's God's call, because I know I'm a fairly passionate person.
Yeah.
All right. I have faith, but right now it feels like a failure. I want to be where God wants me to be, but getting resistance along the way. How do I continue to push past the disappointment?
Well, I'm thinking about Paul,
Yeah.
the disappointment that he faced, being thrown in jail, being beaten. He's such a great testimony and story for us
Right.
as we're going through disappointment. Actually, I do a talk on managing disappointment, and one of the points in there is to take the long view in your life in the midst of disappointment. When you're facing something that's really hard and really, really difficult, step back as far as you can and try to imagine your life at the beginning and at the end. It's a long view, it's a story, and this disappointment is just a dot in the middle of that. And it helps you to give and gain perspective. And that's often what we need when we're dealing with disappointment, is we need some perspective. And so I would say take the long view would be my first thought. And then 2, spend some time reading what Paul's writing. He's so inspirational as it relates to working through disappointment.
Yeah. Man, I just totally just forced that sneeze down. I was going to spread COVID all over the place. Okay. The thing that spoke to me was letting go of the past, but how do you do that? How does God want us to let go of our past hurts and the people that have wronged us? How do we do it?
Yeah.
You want to go or I'll go?
I got a quick story.
Yeah, go.
So, I grew up with a dad who was largely absent. He made a lot of bad decisions, choices. I've shared a lot of this with you. And so life was hard, and I think in a lot of ways is still hard because my dad wasn't there and wasn't present. And some of his choices led to a lot of pain, for our family. Several years ago, I think God gave me one of the greatest gifts of my life, and it was this phrase He gave me. It was actually a question. It was, what if He did the best He could?
Yeah.
And that question that God gave me really allowed me to release him, to forgive him. What if he did the best he could based on how he was raised, based on how he was loved or not loved, how he was cared for or not cared for, based on whatever mental health issues or addictions that he had, et cetera? What if he did the best he could? And that just really allowed me to be freed from the burden of anger and bitterness, and allowed me to love him in the final days of his life. And I know that's not for everybody. That might be for one person that's listening who's got an issue with a parent or a sibling or someone that's close to them that really hurt them.
Yeah.
But it's to change your thinking. Instead of judging them and being angry, it's a shift of, and just really pondering that. What if they did the best they could?
Yeah, Hillary TJ, she had a similar question, and her story is really a lot like yours. Her dad remarried at 14, left her mom, left her, moved out of state. And she says, I've been working for years on not letting his actions hold me back, identifying triggers to help relationships. And she says the one thing I'm supposed to do that bothers her the most is that we're supposed to honor our father and mother. How do you honor someone who dishonored his wife and his children? She said, your sermon last week really spoke to me. I want to elevate myself out of having the past constantly in the back of my mind. So how did you do that? Because what your dad did was wrong.
Sure. Yeah. I think someone shared this with me not too long ago, but, becoming more like Jesus is often a journey of healing. We think about this idea of sanctification as being more virtuous, more loving, caring, et cetera. But becoming more like Jesus is also going on a journey of healing. We all have things to heal from. And so I would start with the place for that gal to say, be committed and be real about the fact that you need to heal, and start there. And then, and I think that's where the journey of healing begins, when you're real about it, when you start to talk about it, you start to share your story with friends, with counselors, with your pastor, et cetera. There's not a prescription for healing. I don't think anyone can prescribe this pill or this book or whatever, but it starts with self-awareness and a commitment. For the hardest things that we all deal with, man, that's a journey to heal through those things. It's not days, it's typically years. But so often I think we're not committed to the healing journey. And what I would say to that gal is be committed to it And that may mean medication. It might mean a counselor. It might mean just telling your story over and over again. But it's the pursuit of healing is where I would encourage her to start.
Yeah, absolutely. I think part of honoring family members that have done wrong is honoring the position. And the way you do that is by committing to make yourself better than that in the future. And here's one of the things I see a lot of parents do, particularly women who are left. Oftentimes their pain leaks out on their kids, and so they transfer it. And so they need the kid to experience the pain and the hurt, to identify with them, to go against the dad. And so if you're a woman who's been left, you have to be careful, not that you ignore your pain, but that you shield it from transferring it upon your kid. Because what happens is then your daughter, particularly, or your son doesn't trust men, doesn't value men. Like if you have a son and you say things like all men are cheaters or all men are terrible, well, he's not going to want to become a man. He stays a boy. If you have a daughter, then they don't trust men. They're always doubting men, and then they create that in a relationship where that wound didn't even happen. And so if we don't deal with our past, it robs us of our future, or it destroys our future. And so I see women who get remarried to a very, very faithful, loving person, but they're blaming him for what, idiot number one did. And so we have to be really, really careful and just know that if we don't move through those past hurts, Jesus can't take us to our future peace. And so we have to really, really work through that. And, every family's different. My mom and dad's parents, they're called the greatest generation who ever lived. Well, they were stuffers and ignorers. So think about it. They fought World War II. My grandmother was in high school. She'd never heard of Japan. Japan bombs Pearl Harbor. And the next thing you know, she's got brothers going off to war. Her dad dies in the field. She's shipped off to California. Her husband that she met, is listed as dead for 3 months. His parents are told that he's dead, comes back. He's not dead, but he was severely wounded. And my dad's dad was, on an oil tanker. His dad left them during the Depression, just gave up, left him with his mother and 4 siblings. And so they stuffed all that. And then my parents' generation, they were the indulgers, right? So they weren't loved, they weren't cared for. And so they just kind of indulged. And, my generation, I think we're the explorers trying to figure out, and I know that sounds more romantic than the previous two, and I don't mean it that way, but we get into a lot of weird stuff, and then our kids, they've been shielded. They're not the shielders. They've been shielded. They haven't experienced anything, and so we're all trying to figure this out together. And a lot of us, instead of following Jesus, what we're doing is we're reacting against our wounds. And so stop reacting against your wounds and start reacting with Jesus and say, okay, I'm going to sit in this. And remember when we started this series, what do you want? Well, I don't have anybody to help me. That's a reaction to life rather than a reaction to Jesus. You got Jesus saying there, look, I want to take this from you and I want to help you heal this. What I would say is the man at the well was instantaneously healed. Sometimes that's our stories. Usually it's this process and this journey where you kind of deal with what is and you have to bury what you wish was, and then you move forward. And most of us don't have the life we wish, so we have to bury that. We have to deal with that so we can move forward with the life that we want. And I just would encourage you to do that. And it's a long process and it's a tough process, but just because you had a bad mom or dad, or a dysfunctional mom and dad, or a mom and dad that left, doesn't mean that you don't have to, live out the 6th commandment, which is honor your father and mother. Dennis Prager, a Jewish rabbi and philosophical and political thinker, says that it's the most difficult command to live out because our parents are flawed. I think about my kids all the time. Not only am I their dad, but I'm their pastor. And, I don't want them to get me confused with God. And so, because if I'm flawed, then God's flawed. If I'm mean, then God's mean. If their perception of me is that I'm not fair, God's not fair. So we have to be very, very careful. And I think that if you can't ever come to the place where you can honor your mom and dad, and however that looks, you're going to struggle honoring God. So.
Yeah, and I would just add to that one of the phrases we use at Sandals is that God blesses houses of honor. And a lot of that starts with how we treat and think about mom and dad. And so if you want to be blessed, you want your home to be blessed, your business, your whatever situation to be blessed, You have to honor people. God blesses houses of honor. And so for this gal and for anyone else who struggled, especially with a parent who made bad choices, you can still honor a parent or anyone through your words, through your actions, and through your thoughts by being kind. You can be kind in all three of those areas, but still maintain boundaries. So back to your question about my relationship with my dad, I had to maintain boundaries with my dad because of some of the things that he did, some of the choices he made. There were implications to me. And so even though he caused a lot of hurt, I knew God was calling me to honor him. And so I was still kind to him with words. I was still kind in my thoughts, and I was still kind in my actions while maintaining boundaries. And so for some people, it may be where mom and dad is either dangerous or toxic, and you need very strong boundaries. But you can do that and still be kind. And so I think sometimes we think those are two completely different things that, if I'm going to have boundaries, I have to be really strong and firm, and not necessarily. You can still be kind.
Yeah, and I'll just, I have a person in my life that, God's called me to honor, and I really struggle with that. And the word that I try to use is just unpleasant, that they're very unpleasant. And I think that's it, because you don't want to lie to your kids and pretend that things aren't the way that they are, but you also don't want to defame, degrade, and just because somebody is something doesn't mean you have the permission to call them something profane. And that's what when Jesus says, and I know you're probably not where you want to be in terms of your Bible reading, and that's why I would encourage you. Wisdom comes from reading the Bible over time. That's where it comes from. But Jesus says, if anyone calls his brother Raka, he is in danger of the fires of hell. And so one of the things that, you don't know what Raka means, and nobody knows exactly how to translate it, but it's a profane term. It's something harsh, nasty, probably something flippantly that you've been called, or maybe something you've called somebody else. But what it means is to degrade people. And so, Jesus has interactions with Herod, right? King Herod, who's not a good person. He calls him a fox. So in that day and age, the term dog, which he actually uses to describe sometimes, Jesus uses language, and he's, can use what he wants because he's the Lord. But he's careful and he's calculating how he honors a person, yet it's clear. And so that's what I would use, is try to find language. Unpleasant, makes me feel unsafe, makes me feel unloved. You don't have to degrade yourself to use degrading language to describe somebody else. Because in the end, that's probably how that person became that person. They weren't loved. They weren't cared for. Very few people are born evil. Most people become evil because of wounds and time and a lack of love. So let me read this one. Sometimes fear stops us from listening to God's calling. I think this is right up your alley. Fear also creates doubt about his calling. Is it really from God, or am I imagining it? How do you get past the fears and to be brave and just go for it? And so let me set this up. So Dan waffled, right? You had like a week there where it was like, I'm not sure, because it was a big decision to go from really, your financial future was laid out, like you were well established in your career, and this was, how did you figure that out?
Yeah, well, I think as it relates to the job, what you're referring to, what it boiled down to was I felt called. Right. Back to where you started earlier. I felt called, and I didn't want to deny that calling. I didn't want to say no to God because I feared God. I feared God more than I feared the uncertainty of our financial situation. At that time, our oldest was heading off to college. And college isn't cheap.
Yeah, no,
right? You've got kids
not
in
even
college.
for pastors.
And so, so there was a lot of fear there, and so for me, a lot of that came down to. And it took a while, but really discerning that God was calling me to something. And so how do you discern calling? That's a great question that people ask. Part of that is through wise counselors, people that don't have an agenda in your life other than they want what's best for you based on what God wants for you. But, seeking wise counsel to discern that calling, obviously praying through the lens of that decision, reading God's word would be the third thing, through the lens of this decision, this issue of dealing with fear, and then looking at the circumstances based on the situation that you're facing. As you put all those things together, I think that's where you're able to discern what God wants for you, especially as it relates to pressing through fear. Because a lot of times fear for us relates to decision making, and that's why I relate it to discerning God's will for us. But a lot of times when I'm dealing with fear, I go and read the book of Joshua, and the opening of Joshua. God tells Joshua, who I believe was a courageous man, to be courageous 3 times right in the beginning. And so I read that, and then I ask God to help me to be courageous and work through that fear, because that's what we need when we're fearful. We need courage from the Lord to work through that.
Yeah, I would say I agree totally with Dan. You need a community group of people that you trust, people that you know, and people who have demonstrated faithfulness to God and who have demonstrated a word from God. That's why a lot of you guys, you feel like community group is optional. You cannot trust yourself to hear from God on your own in a sermon. You just cannot do that. So when you read scriptures, that's a reason why people have the gift of prophecy. That's the reason why people have the gift of tongues. It's the reason why somebody else has the gift of interpretation. When you look at the early church, there's a clear mistrust of the individual in hearing from God on their own. And this is why we get all this wackadoodle stuff that people do, because they align what they think God said with their passions. And so that's what I would really press on. When I surrendered to ministry, it is not something that I wanted to do. It was not something that I was passionate about. It was something that I was afraid I was not gifted at. And so, as I began to talk and share with people, even Tammy, when I was a total sinner and we're dating, right? I told her, I think I'm supposed to be a pastor. Like, she should have said, no, you're ridiculous. But she said, yeah, I can see that. No, nobody along the way went, nope, that's not for you. Person after person after person spoke that over me, and it was community. And I didn't have the community that we have now. I'm in community group, and I pray through things, and I offer things up with Dan, some other key individuals in our church, and just people in my life that I know and trust and hear God. Now, in the end, you're accountable for your decision. So don't be like, Lord, my community group said, you're accountable for your decision. But what I would do is I would say, I want to put this out there. I want people to pray about it and people to weigh in. And, we have a mutual friend, and he came to us and he said, I'm feeling called of God to leave Sandals Church and go somewhere else. He said, and he asked me, he said, I want you to pray about it. So I did. And the Lord told me, tell him to go. And I came back to him, remember, I said, Tony, God said go. And he goes, I didn't think God would say that. And you're laughing because, and it's like, that's what the Lord said. You asked me.
Yeah.
And think about this. This was a tither, a leader in our church, a friend. And he asked me to pray about it and see what God's will was. And I said, man, you need to go and do this. This is your opportunity. This is what you want. And I advised him to follow God, which ultimately negatively impacted me. That's how you know it's God. So these are some great questions. Can you still feel hurt and still forgive? So there's some tension here. Christians and Jews have a very, very different understanding of forgiveness. Most Christians think that we just have to forgive everybody in order to move on. I think there's some tension here. I think forgiveness, biblically, like how does God forgive you, Dan? So did God just in heaven arbitrarily decide to forgive you, or does he require something?
It requires something.
Yeah, it's called repentance and faith. And so God forgives the sinner that repents of their sin and comes to him in faith. And so I would say, you are biblically mandated to forgive people who are repentant and come to you in good faith. They're not manipulative. They're not trying to move past this. They're not trying to use you. They're not trying to get back in, to your good graces again so they can hurt you or wound you. I think those people you are mandated to forgive. Here's what I would encourage you. If you can't get there, here's how I think you could start. I would say, God, I can't forgive this person. I can't do it. I'm going to hand this over to you, Lord, and I'm going to trust, God, that you're going to make it right. So I need you to take this emotion, I need you to take this hurt, and I need you to help me heal from this wound. But I don't think you need to go and reconcile with a person. Like, what do you do if somebody, abused you or molested you? Mm-hmm. How on earth do you reconcile that relationship? You have to disconnect from that person and say, okay, God, so God is the mediator, so he is able to reconcile us. So we can go to God and say, God, here's what I think you need to do is I need to get past this hurt So it's not holding me in a place that I don't want to be. I need to get to a place where I can trust people, make friends, move on in my life, and I'm not imprisoned by this wound that's holding me back. That's what you need to move towards. If you can get to the place where you can forgive them, I think that's a healthy place. I think that would be a goal. I don't agree that it's something that's mandated. And so I think people that push you to forgive everyone, here's what I would say is, they haven't been hurt.
Yeah.
They have not been wounded, and they have not walked in some things that are extraordinarily painful. But if it's demonic, and so here's the thing, and so you may not be ready to forgive, and that's between you and God. Here's what's not okay: anger, resentment, bitterness, deceitfulness, slander. Those things are not acceptable. So those things need to come out. So God, help me deal with this anger. God, help me get rid of this bitterness. Those are commands. That's between you and God. You've got to get rid of the poison and the venom. You may not be ready to forgive the snake that bit you, but God can take the poison from your body. And that's what you want to get rid of. So God, this wound, it's poisoning me, and it's ruining me, and it's wrecking how I see people and how I see you, God. And I need you to extract this poison from me, and I'm going to hand this over to you. And I'm going to trust, God, that you're going to do the right thing and you're going to make it right. But I just think a lot of counseling, I think these are well-meaning people. So Jesus on the cross, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. Man, if you can get there, praise God. Hallelujah. You are like Jesus. For most of us, we got to deal with the bitterness. We got to deal with the anger. We got to deal with the mistrust. We got to deal with how we treat everybody else and how we look at ourselves because of what's happened to us. If God does the work of forgiveness, and I really think there's also a difference between forgiveness where it's just like, yeah, right, we were young, that was stupid. I've moved on. Man, that's great. Reconciliation, that absolutely has to have them coming to you and saying, I was wrong. Yeah. I was wrong. So those people that crucified Jesus, he forgave them. Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. They are not reconciled to God. They are not. They are going to be held accountable for what they did to Jesus unless they repent, unless they're made right, unless they're reconciled to God through Jesus Christ. So I think it's a demonstration of who Jesus is, but it's not actual forgiveness until they repent of their sin and place their faith and trust in Jesus. And I know that's technical, but we do a lot of disservice, and I think we minimize the level of wounding that some people have walked through when we just say you just need to forgive. And so I had a person in our church who hurt me, and I called him, what did I would say Voldemort. That's not what the name I called him. Voltron, that was the name I used, which was this fictional Japanese robot character in the 80s. I would say, God, help me to forgive Voltron the way you've forgiven me. That was my prayer. God, I want you to bless Voltron the way you've blessed me.
That's great.
I didn't mean that prayer for like 6 months, but I prayed it every day because I knew that ultimately I had to forgive this person. So my prayer is that's where you can get. What I would say right now is let's get rid of the poison, then let's talk about forgiveness. So
that's great. That's great. Yeah, I would add the word imprison. That's the word that came to mind as you were talking. You shared that word. And I think a lack of forgiveness can be like self-imprisonment.
Yeah.
Someone who's unwilling to forgive, especially over time when someone's repenting, it's like them walking into a jail cell that they control and they have the key. They shut the door and they're imprisoned by this anger and this hatred and this bitterness. And honestly, that can change the course of your life in a negative way. And that's all due to a lack of forgiveness. And so I think this is key. I think some people's life is miserable for a long stretch of time because they're unwilling to forgive people.
Yeah.
And so if that is anyone listening now, I would say, man, you got to really work through this healing and this forgiveness so you can get out of prison and you can be free.
Yeah.
As God wants you to be.
And ultimately, here's the thing: you are mandated to forgive people who come to you and ask for forgiveness. That's not an option. So I left that out. Paul writes to the church and he says, forgive one another of their faults. You need to distinguish between faults, like people's personalities, the things that they overlook. Like you cannot store those things up, and actual wounds like abuse, adultery, cheating, just crimes committed against you. And you need to make sure that you understand the difference between that. If you're married to someone, they're going to offend you. You need to forgive their faults. You need to be quick to forgive, because living together is something very different from living with an abuser or living with someone who's committed a crime against you. And we need to make sure that we understand that there's a difference in wounding, and we just have to deal with that. All right, Dan, look at this one. How do I accept God's grace, love, and kindness into my heart? Okay, let's stop there. That's 2 questions. I was cheating. There's 2 questions. Let's go there. How do I accept God's grace and love and kindness into my heart?
How do I accept it? Man, that's a great question. I think spend some time dwelling on the cross.
Yeah.
I've been talking to people through the quarantine. I'm trying to dwell on positive things, because my mind goes to dwell on negative things and the sky is falling. And so I'm using this word dwell for this person, for them to think about and really spend time. When I say dwell, I mean spend 20 minutes, 30 minutes, 45 minutes, an extended period of time studying and learning about what Jesus did on the cross, about the sacrifice that God made to give up his son for you, to really try to understand how special you are. God made only one of us. There's only going to be one of us. There only is one of us. There's only going to be one. There's just one. We're special. We're unique. And as you start to understand, I think the cross and the finished work that Jesus has done, I think it allows us to be more open to receive God's love and to understand grace, unmerited favor, to understand that favor that God's given us. Because why would he give up his son? Because we're special, and he loves us deeply. And so I would say dwell on that. Read the scriptures. Read about the crucifixion to really understand how deep God's love runs for you.
Yeah, and I would say for me, that's something that I wrestled with deeply. And I ultimately came to the conclusion that I was under a demonic influence. So the gospel was good for you. The gospel was good for Dan. The gospel is for everybody else, but Matt Brown knew better. Matt Brown knew better, and so the blood and the work of Jesus Christ on the cross was not for me. And if I said those words out loud, I would say to someone else, that's crazy, that's heretical. But that's how I really felt deep inside, and I had to bring that out and confess that and ask God to take it away, because it just wasn't true. The last words of Jesus on the cross are, "It is finished." And so for me to not accept that, or to believe I can't accept that, is really not about me, it's about Jesus. And it's saying he couldn't save me.
Yeah.
So I would really go there. The next question, how to be at peace with outcomes? Well, what else are you going to do? I mean, we can't control much. That's what we've learned. And I think peace is something that we work at. It's why Paul says, as far as it depends upon you, be at peace with all people. So peace is something we have to work for. It's not something I do well all the time. I told Tammy I did the one interview with all the news media, and I'm critical of Trump, how he responds to media, and I just put my head down. I told Tammy, I was like, I was just like Trump today. I lost my cool because it didn't go the way I wanted.
Yeah, you didn't like the outcome, sure.
Yeah, I didn't like the outcome. I didn't like how I was being treated. So,
yeah.
All right. Where do we Christians draw the line when we know another believer is toxic, mentally ill, or is not a safe person to have around? What you do is I think you get in community group and you have somebody to make sure that that's not just a personality conflict, that's not just, I wouldn't make that decision on your own, but I would bring somebody into that. And then if there's a group of healthy Christians who've exhibited solid leadership, who've exhibited that they hear from God, that they follow God, that they're not, that they don't follow the path of sinners, right? Because most people are going to tell you what you want to hear. You just got to know most people are chickens. Most people are chickens, and they're not going to disagree with you, and they're going to tell you, yeah. So you got to have that person in your life that says, I think, you need to press into this. And then if you and I were friends, and I knew this person, and I said, yep. I said, you know what, that person is toxic. They're mentally ill. They're not safe. then I would say you need to set up boundaries and you need to not be around them. Now, obviously, you don't always have time. If this is a violent person, somebody direct messaged me during COVID and said, I want to move out of my house. And I said, what's going on? What's going on? Is he abusive? Is he physically threatening you? Are you in danger? If those things are true, get out. If not, I would hunker down in place. Yeah. This sucks for, all of us. Yep. And let's try to, figure this out when it's easier to find some place to get at. But a lot of times, we can say someone else is toxic and we're flippant about that. And we may be toxic together. Yeah. We might be doing this together. And I think it's easy to say this person is this or that person is that. And it's easy to pretend it's someone else or everyone else. And it's harder to say, okay, what am I doing to contribute to this? So I'll be praying for you. And here's my hope is that it's not a mentally ill, toxic, or unsafe person, because my hope is that you can make a change. Obviously, those things create bigger issues. So here's my challenge to you guys. I would have liked some more questions on goals. So I think that it's important to make goals and to set goals, and it's important to work through that. And of course, somebody just sent one in. This is going to be our last question. I have big goals that my friends and family don't believe in. How do I get my family to believe in me? Here's what I would do. I would get some new friends at church, and I would get some friends that are honest and real with you based upon your giftedness, based upon your effort. I think a lot of people want to be Elon Musk, and here's my question. So when you're 18 years old, are you working 100 hours a week? That's what Elon Musk was doing. Yeah. When you're 12 years old, Steve Jobs. When Steve Jobs was 12 years old, he was emailing the head of Hewlett-Packard to say, can I have some extra computer parts? These are the people that change the world. So you have to have effort that aligns with dreams. So a lot of people in ministry, they're big talkers. Big goals, huge goals, right? They don't put in the effort. They don't put in the time. They don't work hard. And I see this all the time. God tends to bless effort. He tends to bless effort. When you look at the Apostle Paul, the dude worked hard. So here's what I would say. You might have big goals. What kid doesn't want to be a millionaire? What kid doesn't want to be famous? What kid doesn't want to be something big, right? What I would say is ask your family, is it my effort that does, what is the reason? What is the reason, I don't have this or whatever it takes. And here's what I would say, sometimes people are wrong. Like, I didn't know this, but somebody told me that Lauren Daigle was not picked for American Idol. So I was just like, wow, they missed that one. Yep. That's a miss. So even experts get it wrong. And in the end, I would say most people did not believe in me. Most people did not believe in me. But I have to be honest. I had a track record that I think created some substantial doubt. So I was a big talker. I was a big, yeah, I'm going to do this and yeah, I'm going to do that. And I talked big, but I lived small. So what you have to do is you have to back up your voice with what you're going to do. And you have to actually start doing it. It's one thing to say you're going to write a book. It's another thing to write a book. It's one thing to say you're going to do an Ironman. Let me tell you something. It is another thing at 4:30 in the morning when you're getting up and you're going, okay, today's the day where I'm going to find out if I can do this. You came and watched me speak at Saddleback Church, which was, like if you're a little leaguer, you want to play in the majors. Yeah. If you're a pastor, you want to speak at Saddleback. Well, I always thought, yeah, I can handle it. I had diarrhea for 5 days before I preached at Saddleback Church. 5 days. Went to the doctor. What's that stuff you take when you get diarrhea? What's it called? Imodium?
Imodium, yeah.
Imodium AD. I had so much Imodium AD in my system, I should have been farting ash. But, right? And here's why. Here's why I was so nervous. Because I had talked a big talk. Sure. And I was going to find out whether or not I could do it or not. Now, they haven't asked me back. Yeah. So maybe I thought I did okay.
You did great.
Thank you. Well, you get paid by me. So,
you did
so I thought I did okay.
A lot of other people told you you were great.
But, when I was a kid, my friend Roger's turning 50 this week, which is just weird, my childhood friends, and I talked a lot of smack. My mouth was always bigger than my ability. And And I'll never forget, I was in Little League, and I was 15 years old, and all my friends were behind the fence. And I was up to bat, and one of our other friends, Jed Finch, he was the number one pitcher in our league, was on the mound. And my friend Roger said, "You talk a lot of crap, Matt. You better get a hit." By the grace of God and all that is holy, I hit a double.
That's great.
I hit a double. I think
great.
Jed Finch struck me out every other time for the year. But that day, that game, I got a hit. And I just realized I am really good at talking. God was going to use that.
Yeah, amen.
I was not really good at following through and actually doing it. And so you've got to become a person. You've got to be honest. So you have big goals. Do you have big effort?
Yeah.
And here's the thing. You said my friends and my family don't believe in. That concerns me.
Yeah.
So either you got jacked friends
Yeah.
and an abusive family, or you got friends and family that are saying,
Yeah.
you know, and here's the thing is, nobody knows who's going to be the big deal when you're little, right? Nobody knows. I don't know. It's end of the year yearbooks. Are they ever right? Most likely to succeed? You know?
No, they're not. No. I would, so to add on to that, for a few minutes, I would say, ask your friends and family why they don't believe in you.
Yeah.
That's what I would say.
And don't like lose your mind when they give you an answer.
I mean, obviously there's some people maybe in your friends that you don't want to ask, but the reality is, especially if you're younger, you may not be faithful in the little things.
Yeah.
And I'll translate that. Are you a person of your word? Do you do what you say you're going to do? Like to your point earlier, do you show up on time? Do you make your bed in the morning? Do you pay your bills on time? Are you that person, or are you the opposite? Because if you're the opposite of that, I would say you should expect people to not believe in you and your goals. And so be faithful in the little things, and maybe that's what you need to work on in this season as you head towards realizing these big goals that you have.
Yeah, and I would just say this, Monday was Memorial Day. Everybody had it off, right? I had school, 8:30 in the morning on Memorial Day, because I have a goal. I want to learn Hebrew. That's my goal. In Israel, it's not Memorial Day.
Yeah.
So you got to decide, are you willing to work on your days off? If you're not, you will never be great.
Yeah.
You will never be great. Listen to me. Rich people, famous people, unless your family is wealthy and powerful. Okay, those people, right? That wasn't me and you. Unless your mom and dad are wealthy or powerful, you're going to have to work for everything you get. That's just the way that it is. And you may work really hard, and it might not happen. But I don't think God is going to hold us accountable for our success. He's going to hold us accountable for our effort. And so what I do is, to everybody out there who feels like you're supposed to do something special with your life, I would say routine is your best friend. People that know me the most would say, Matt is routine to a fault. I do the same thing on a regular basis, and I do what I think I can do well, and I try not to deviate from that. Like I just try to stay in my lane, because you can't be great at everything. And I love Elon Musk, but I think what could ultimately bring him down is he tries to do everything.
Too many things.
He's involved in too many things. And what made Steve Jobs great is he did very, very few things. Yep. And so what I would encourage you is, listen to me, nobody can do everything. Nobody. And the leaders early on at Sandals Church who've done the least are the ones that thought they had the most. They thought they could do it all, and what they did ultimately was nothing. Yeah. They did nothing or very little with what God gave them. Figure out what your niche is, stay in that niche, work at your craft, right? So a lot of people say, well, why are you so funny? Why do you act so clever? Because I don't have a big booming pastor voice. Well, why don't you lead the church in worship? I can't sing. So I stay in my lane. I'm clever. I try to craft my message, and I use my gifts, and I use my talents, and I don't try to be anybody else. I try to be myself, and I work with what I've got, right? Because that's all we can do.
Yep.
I don't have what some people have, but I have more than what a lot of people have. And so I just try to work my craft. And so let me challenge you. Man, if you have big goals, you have to bring forth big effort. And, I'm going to close with this. We just finished Last Dance. Did you watch it?
6 episodes.
So 6 episodes, you know how it ends, right? They break up. So that's not a newsflash. That's the whole point of it. People give Michael Jordan a lot of grief, but I don't think we give him enough credit for the effort that he put into being the best he could be. So he wasn't a therapist. He wasn't a warm, fuzzy guy. He was a warrior on a basketball court, and that's the guy that I can honor. I'm not going to honor him as a dad, a parent, a husband, right, a friend, but I can honor the effort that he put forth when he stepped on the basketball court. Sorry, LeBron James, he's the greatest player who's ever lived. He got every ounce out of that body that he possibly could, and you didn't want to face him. And so that's what I want to do with this body God's given me. I want to give God everything I possibly can out of this, and the older you get, the less your body works and the more you have to use your mind. So exercise your mind on a regular basis so that you can stay sharp. And anyways, I love you guys. Thank you so much for your questions. We will see you next week. This weekend at church, it is how to elevate your thinking. And we're going to talk about how thinking and attitude go hand in hand with goals. And so a lot of you guys have stinking thinking. And if you want God to elevate your life, you got to elevate your mind. So don't miss this weekend. Love you guys. God bless.